Welcome back to the Alembic Files. I'm Al.
I'm Theo.
And this will be the conclusion of Once Upon a Time. And we're going to end it with what I find very interesting, and that is, especially for a Christian country, if you're going to buy that, and it's false anyway, but how many people do buy that, then will somebody explain to me how in the world the seat of the federal government can be so festooned with occult symbology? What is that all about? So I'm going to throw it to you, Theo, as far as your take and how that first hit you when you realized that a lot of these most prominent edifices and designs and such harken back to paganism.
And the other question is, how can the Christians be so blind to it?
Okay, that sounds like a good A and B. Go ahead.
Well, they seem to always get these guys from France to come along, Freemasons from France to come in and be their artists or sculptors. I had to look this up. Pierre Charles
L'Enfant, yeah,
was the obviously Freemasonic designer of the layout of Washington, D.C. in Freemasonic pentagrams and whatnot. And then later on you had the Statue of Liberty, also was a French production. The goddess of, the Colombian goddess thing, goddess of liberty, that's a total Freemasonic thing with the points of light in her head. And the illuminating torch she's holding.
Well, we'll break it down and get specific. Staying in D.C. for the moment, you take a look at probably the two most recognizable edifices, and one would be the Capitol building, and the other would be the Washington Monument. Now, I think everybody probably knows at this point that the symbology of those two buildings pretty much related to sexual parts. The dome being the female, and obviously the obelisk representing it's a phallic.
Well, anybody that listens to us would know, but nobody else would know.
Well, I'm not so sure about that anymore. I agree. It is a bit of an aha for most. But, there's another thing that I've always wondered about, too, and I never, I just passed it and said, forget about it. I mean, I worked on Pennsylvania Avenue. You look to the left, there's the Capitol. You look to the right, there's the monument. And, it crossed my mind a little bit, but I think people understand that certainly this wasn't any kind of architecture or motif, I guess you would say, that is very American. Of course, there isn't a lot of stuff that was American anyway, given the fact that, for the most part, we are Europe West. So, but
you got to have, and then it starts with, of course, D.C. You got to have the phallus, the Washington Monument, and then you got to have the female representative, the dome, the Capitol dome. And it's not just D.C. In our capital cities of other states and in even minor cities, there's a plethora of cities around the country, great and small, that when you look in their town square, you're going to look around and you will see some type of phallus, some type of obelisk, and somewhere near it, look for a domed building. And that's your Freemasons set up that city and probably govern it still.
Yeah, now let's just take a look. Now, this may be a coincidence, and it might be. I kind of think it isn't, but that it's just really peculiar. When this nation was founded as the United States of America, 13 colonies, for the most part, were turned into 13 states. Now, in the legend of Osiris, who was murdered, his body was cut up by Typhon into 14 pieces, and they were scattered everywhere. And Osiris's wife, Isis, Semiramis, right. It's a send down from that. It's Isis too. All right, maybe that predates Semiramis, but I don't know.
It goes under a lot of names. Ashtarti and Diana is another one.
And that's also very rich that would happen. But now you take a look at the
Mary's
legend.
Another one. Hello.
Oh, Mary, yeah. But you take a look at the story. Now, there are 14 parts. Isis goes to gather them together so they can be buried all in one place. But you can't find one part of his anatomy, and that is the penis. So I find it interesting that we have 13 states who represent the 13 parts, 13 of the 14 parts that were scattered. And then we come down to the 14th territory in the United States, which was not created as a state, but as a district. So the 14th part is the district which houses the Washington Monument, the phallic symbol of Osiris's missing penis.
And this is where it inevitably, Masonry, it ties up with, in ancient, way back times, it ties in with sun worship, because, and the symbolism confirms this as well. They take this symbol, a circle with a point in it, and that point represents, the circle is the dome again, the female, but that point within it represents a shaft of light. In other words, like a sunbeam or sun ray penetrating the earth, and then that's where you get the fertility, where you can grow something. And sun worship is linked inexorably with fertility cult worship, and that's Freemasonry. They worship the phallus and they worship the sun. That's why they're always talking, one of their main code words to identify one another is light. Are you a son of the light, or are you this or that of the light?
Yeah, the leitmotif is usually found, for lack of a better phrase, should we call them religions? I mean, what would you call, like the OTO or Astro Argentum? I mean, can you call them religions? I don't know. You call them secret societies, organizations, whatever. But in all of them, they play with the leitmotif. And that's kind of like, and even Albert,
where you get the Illuminati,
huh?
the phrase, the word.
Well, yeah, the light bearers.
Yeah.
Even Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma talks a lot about the light. And they kind of pull a fast one. There's a couple of things that they do. One of them is they create Lucifer separate from Satan. And for the most part, and being really economical with my words, the Lucifer image or persona is kind of considered human and kind of mischievous, but not really a bad guy. So they can distance Lucifer from Satan. When in essence, I think they're all in one. I mean, is that your take, or how do you look at that duality? If in fact
they're all in one, and it's the King James Bible, or the any of the Bibles, the Geneva, any of the Bibles of the true lineage of Bibles, they all identify Lucifer as Satan. These New Age Bibles of today, the NIV and the RSV and the NASB and all those that stem ultimately from Rome, those took away that reference, linking the identity of Satan to Lucifer.
So, yeah, we do see then, and this goes back to what you had said, and that is the whole idea using the light motif, and I don't mean late motif, I mean light motif. And that's present also, as you said, in D.C. Did you want to? All right, you kind of stopped yourself. So do you want to get back to the main road there as far as what you were talking about with regard to the buildings?
Well, I guess let me finish a thought I started earlier with the sun worship thing. If you think about it, if you go back far away in time, and I would point to a time not too long after the Noahic flood, when people scattered throughout the world and they lost much of their memory of the flood and what happened. Much of it remains, it just got garbled. But they became so barbaric at that time that they're looking around and wondering where they came from, what's the meaning of life. And the only thing they know that is the most powerful thing that makes you feel like a god is you have this weird ability, most people, to reproduce. You can generate life. And so that act, that union of a man and a woman generating life becomes incorporated into their religion. They become like gods. And they united that with the other thing that gives life, enables us to grow things for sustenance, is the sun. And they became inexorably linked. And this Sunday, unfortunately, Many Christian incorporated churches around the country are going to have this sunrise service. That it's a vestige of this ancient paganism. It's eerie, creepy.
Well, I think I only went to one sunrise service, and that probably would have been around 86. And this is kind of cool, but all right, so whoever shows up at 7 o'clock at the church goes up to the Jersey Palisades, and the Jersey Palisades are lined with a number of parks, all under the Palisades Interstate Park Commission. So here we are in one in Fort Lee, just south of the George Washington Bridge. And I mean, it was kind of neat because we were facing east, of course, and the skyline was there, and that's pretty cool. I mean, the skyline, a nice morning, nobody out there to screw it up just yet. And we had a sunrise service with the sun coming up over the skyscrapers. And then later on, I wondered about that because what are we worshiping? Are we worshiping the sun, S-O-N, or are we worshiping the sun, S-U-N? And, of course, that's a pagan symbol that can be found in many of the paintings, renditions of Christ and others, where you have what they call the halo or the aura behind the head. That is strictly pagan. So the painters who did that either didn't know or did know. At any rate, that got passed along also in Christianity, and without any warnings against it. You kind of look at it, and I think in a sense of Protestantism, they look at it as like, well, that's a Catholic thing. But, fine, but you still don't understand the core of that. So, yeah, I mean, going up there, I was wondering why. And here's another thing, too. First of all, there's no reason for us to suspect that Christ was resurrected in the morning.
Yeah, it does, especially not at the moment of sunrise. What is that about?
Right. And, I'm wondering, too, the whole bit about the 3 days. And I bring that up because, most funerals, the wake, the whole 9 yards, 3 days, right?
Yeah. 1,
2 in the funeral parlor, 3 in the church. That's it. But I always wondered why it was 3 days and whether or not that was some kind of throwback to the whole situation with Christ, or whether, because, the Jewish religion does not look at it as 3 days. It's 1 day, which I think is extremely smart, by the way. But, so it doesn't go back to Jewish tradition as far as I can see. So I wonder if it's based on the biblical account of the Good Friday to Sunday type of thing. And without getting too far with that, too, there was a listener who had come upon an author, I think, or somebody who was doing some research that would maybe it would be a book by now, but I've been out of touch with the individual for like 5 years. But she was telling me that from the research this individual did, you could pretty much put your finger on when all this did happen, and it probably wasn't a Friday or whatever they used back then. Because certainly, was there an observed Gregorian calendar at the time? I don't know. You can find that out easily.
Oh, they had the Mosaic calendar, which
okay.
Not even sure anybody knows what that is anymore.
Well, the ridiculous thing too about Easter, on top of all this, is that first of all, Easter is put in the King James, and I think that was a mistake. I mean, it was.
I've heard that. Okay, maybe, but the other thing is, it could be a reference to what Herod was celebrating. He was a pagan.
Well, I'll tell you what, if that happened, and I'm not saying that linkage isn't correct, but that didn't get through to the Christians.
No, well, I think that's Romanism.
Yeah,
which again, Protestantism did not break far enough away from.
No, not at all. And I think what's even more in your face and not understood is that you have a day that you were born and you have a day that you will die. It's a fixed date. So, like, my birthday's August 22nd, all right? It's always going to be August 22nd. It's not going to float amongst, 4 to 6 weeks or something? So how in the world can a death date be moved around? I mean, Christ died on one day, and now we see that we're going to have it now on, this coming Sunday, which is, I don't know, the 31st or something?
Well, that's what links it up to the equinox pagan star worship thing, too.
Well, it goes back to the first full moon, I believe, after the vernal equinox.
I'll tell you what, on Sunday, my wife and I, we go around and we visit some friends. I'm not going to go to any kind of service that day, but my wife and I, we do visit our friends, and our friends are in the habit of, I'm going to do it. I'm tired of it. And I'm going to do it, politely. But our friends that day, they'll come up and shake your hands and say, Christ is risen. And I'm sorry, I'm going to answer them, yes, but it has nothing to do with Easter. Or I might even say Ishtar.
Well, that's just it. I mean, in the King James, I'm assuming that the word that should have been there was Passover. I think.
I know that's one argument. I know.
All right. And then the other thing is, why are we having rabbits and eggs? Rabbits don't give birth to eggs from which little rabbits emerge.
But rabbits procreate a lot, and that gets into the fertility cult thing.
Yeah, and supposedly the legend of Nimrod, who was a hunter, he and his brother, and that they favored rabbits, I guess, is their main cuisine.
Okay.
And of course, the egg has to do with this whole Semiramis or Semiramis, how are you going to pronounce it, about the descent of the moon god, or queen of, what would you call it, goddess of the moon, and her descent to Earth, where the egg opens up and she emerges. So you got the eggs, you got the bunny rabbits, and you got the floating death date, which, again, like I said, makes no sense. And Christians have never asked, why is this thing moving around? Christmas doesn't move around.
Yeah. Let me quickly cite two books which document all this marvelously.
Okay.
The one you've heard of, Bill Cooper talked about it a lot, The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. The other one is a lot newer, Too Long in the Sun by Richard Reeves, and Reeves is R-I-V-E-S.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No, getting back to D.C.
Well, then we'll get back to the monument. And the thing I find is interesting as well, the monument is 555 feet.
That's right, but if you count underground?
Well, no, you hold that for a second, and I'll tell you mine, and then go ahead and add that. But if you multiply the feet times 12, representing 12 inches to a foot, the total inches are 6,660. 6660.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do you have something on the underground?
Well, I know I've read this, but I don't have a source or anything. That supposedly it's another 100 feet underground, so it is 666 feet long. I don't know if that's true.
In those days, I'm doubting that. Yeah, okay. But what's ever visible as it is below, it is above, maybe. But
we'll go with your numbers then.
Well, those are mine. But all right, fair enough. The other thing about D.C. is interesting, and this is the way that this has been sanitized. What is that thing perched on top of the Capitol dome?
Oh, that's whose name got changed.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
It's a goddess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another
Today
thing.
they call it this Orwellian innocuous euphemism, the statue of something. What the heck do they call it nowadays? The Liberty.
All right, let's give the background on it. Fair enough. If you go to encyclopedias, if you go to Wikipedia, which is just as full of garbage as encyclopedias, and Wikipedia.
It's a small little statue, too, comparatively to the building.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course. I mean, did you ever see something that adorned the roof of anything, whether it's a weather vane or a rooster or what? I mean, it's got, you can't take away from the whole construction.
But there are going to be people out there who don't even know there's any kind of statue on top of the Capitol dome, probably.
Correct. From the biography of Garfield, which you gave me, it's a biography by Alan Peskin. It was published first time out, let's see, 1968. All right, in this book, this begins chapter 12, and that chapter is titled Pushing Lincoln. The roar of 100 cannon saluted the goddess of liberty as she was hoisted to the top of the Capitol dome. Now crowned and completed just in time to greet Garfield as he began his that's great, congressional career. Maybe he should have been in a correctional institution. All right, so it was the goddess of liberty. Now, of course, everybody changes that, It is now the Statue of Freedom. All right. And I mean, you look at the statue though. I'm trying to figure out exactly. That's kind of weird. It kind of looks Greek. It kind of looks a Native American. I don't know. But again, so what is with the use of the female image throughout our country? In other words, right, we have the goddess of liberty there, and you look at the coins from that day, the gold and the silver. Most of them were adorned with what is called Lady Liberty, but we're still dealing with this motif of femininity. And we, of course, and we say, as it relates to paganism.
It's goddess worship, and it shows up time and time again throughout Scripture and throughout history.
Well, if you're going to buy into this construct, which we do, but not everybody does, if you have God as a male being or something akin to male, then Satan, the counterfeiter, has to come up with something else. And what he came up with was, I think it kind of like largely is the overarching name, and that is Queen of Heaven. And then that branches out into all manifestations of the female. You just mentioned some like Diana and Mary. So it's all over the money as well. So there's another representation of that. And now we can take a look at why in the world is D.C. District of Columbia? What's the deal with Columbia? Who is Columbia?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, one of the explanations is that it's the female version of Columbus. Personally, I'm not buying that. But still in all, why do we need a female representation of anything? Whether it's a female counterpart of Columbus, why don't you just call it the District of Columbus then? You know, why feminize it? Not that I have anything against that. I mean, or women or anything like that. But here we still see that thread of the Queen of Heaven in other manifestations. So. Okay.
So we got Columbia in D.C., and you know this. We've both spoken with this guy, Stephen Michael Schroeder, who exposed Indianapolis as, after D.C., one of the most blatantly Masonic, pagan cities in the country in its architecture. And I wonder, and I think this is where Stephen Michael Schroeder was going. He may have even said it, but the name Indiana and Indianapolis, was there really a tribe of Indians named after that, or are they taking the name Diana from that? And when another goddess, of course. And when you look at the architecture of D.C., that's not going to sound so shocking. It is extremely pagan.
Yeah, well,
Indianapolis. I may have said D.C. Sorry.
The other thing is that Schroeder. It's been a long time since I had him on, and that is he was saying that the whole idea out in Indiana was the magic squares. How much of the counties were square, and how much of the land was cut up. I mean, most acreage we see as being square acres, you know. But
yeah,
he also said that was laid out for a certain purpose. And honestly, if you take a look at the Grange, you will find in that organization a lot of symbology directly reflecting the Masonic structure. So if that had anything to do with the Grange, I don't know. Why didn't other states do it? I don't know. And I've been far removed from talking with Stephen, but he was saying that also had a history behind it.
Yeah. That would probably have been some type of internecine struggle within the Masons. You'd have the citified Masons, who were the bankster types who would be taking advantage of the farming Masons. Of course, if there's going to be some type of a struggle like that, they're sworn to secrecy, so you'd never hear about it.
Yeah, correct. So moving away, or as we move away from the Washington Monument and the Capitol, we'll go on to some of the other buildings that are there. But again, dating back to the creation of the district, You know, Washington was a Mason. Washington was also a Rosicrucian. And he had a house that sat up on a hill in Mount Vernon. And while all this Masonic symbology, and again, Theo, you know, I mean, this goes back before the Masons, and I tend not to bang on it anymore. It does get interesting with their symbology after you leave the Blue Lodge in the in the Scottish Rite, rather. The Blue Lodge was the first 3 degrees. And it does get a little zanier as you go up through all the other degrees to 33, and the York Rite as well. So, we've often wondered, because Phelps, of course, was always this big proponent of Washington as Christian and such, and that Washington didn't know. You know, I tell you what, for the President of the United States, Washington didn't know a lot of stuff. And I think it's Phelps' takes and others that, you know, he just didn't know they were doing that. I don't know. I'm not buying that story, are you?
No. Did you know, you probably got the email, Phelps' site is down right now?
Yeah, that was sent to me. I think the person who sent the email was kind of leaning toward the fact that the government did it. And you didn't see my response, I don't think, did you?
No.
No, and I said, no, it's not the government. I mean, no. But I think that he's been in a down spiral for some time. And not going to dedicate the show to that, but I'll just say, I think he might have fallen out of favor for whoever supported him financially and otherwise. Because I don't believe he had a radio show in the last, 2 months or so. And his website, which was once static, years ago got turned into a 3-ring media circus. It really was pretty sharp. And now it's gone. It went back to just some kind of like static site, and now it's gone. So there's a story there for sure, but...
Phelps gets a whole lot right. It's too bad he thinks what he thinks about the fluff pieces he's read about Washington.
Well, and this is one of them. Don't tell me that Washington didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
You bring in Lafont, the Mason, from France. He designs it. He saw the designs.
Yeah.
And if he didn't see the designs, if he ever walked around saying, "Hey, how's the construction going?" they would have told him. So I mean, that's wanting to love Washington despite the facts.
Yeah.
So no, he knew what was going on without a doubt. Now, a lot of people dance around this Columbia, but seriously, I'll give you the Wikipedia first paragraph. Columbia is a historical and poetic name used for the United States of America, and is also the name of its female personification. Why do we have a female personification? All right, it has inspired the names of the many persons, places, objects, institutions, and companies, such as the District of Columbia. Are they calling that a company? Really? All right. The site of the National Capitol and Columbia University. Those are the last two representations. Columbia was largely displaced as the female symbol of the United States by the Statue of Liberty. Oh, okay. Now, is that beautiful or what? Okay, well, Columbia was thrown over, and now we look at the Statue of Liberty. It's the same thing, you morons.
Yeah. Speaking of the same thing, my wife, she used to work with, she was a nice woman, a woman who was a Wiccan, basically. She was into the white witch stuff. And this friend related to my wife that at one point in her life when she knew nothing about Catholicism or most any other mainstream religion. She was into Wicca. But for some reason, some occasion, she had occasion to walk into a Roman Catholic church, and she looked around at all the pictures of Mary on the wall, and she said she felt right at home. She said, "Oh, it's the goddess worship." I said, "There it is. I'm not so far away from my own beliefs."
Yeah, that says it all. No two ways about it. And again, Mary, I think, is an abused figure in Christianity. In other words, I think used for certain things that should be attributed to Christ rather than Mary. And I think you know where I'm going with that. I mean, you don't pray to Mary, you don't pray to the saints.
And it wasn't until around 1850 that she was made officially a god, and and was immaculate and was raised up to heaven. That's when that all. People don't know the history. Romanists don't either, especially. What did they think was going on before that?
Well, there's another thing too, and that is the street layout, which many have made much about. And I don't know if I go for the whole thing, but it is interesting that Constitution Avenue and Independence Avenue converge at the circular grounds upon which the Capitol stands. So in essence, you have a compass, because you have these streets coming in. I don't know, what do you want to call it? At what kind of angle? I don't know, maybe 20 degrees or whatever. And they meet. So if you look at it from the top, you're looking at the original compass without, that bridge in between to measure stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that it may go into a pentagon, I'm not sure, but at least I get the compass thing, which would, I think, be Masonic. Let's see.
Okay, let's real quick.
Go ahead.
Other American iconography also is this gets, I don't know, maybe sinister, I guess. It's Freemasonic. Think of the icon of Uncle Sam pointing his finger, the "I want you" posters.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody did this. You can find it online. Do a search, describe what I'm about to describe, and you'll find it. Somebody did it. I actually used to have a picture of it up. But you can transpose the goat god of Baphomet onto the face of Uncle Sam, and it fits perfectly. Uncle Sam's face is a goat head. That's why he's got the billy goat beard. It's a goat's head, because of the horns, forms a pentagram, and that's Freemasonic. It's Luciferian, and that's our country. Again, Luciferian, and that's another point we got to make is Freemasonry at the highest levels is Lucifer worship. They think that Lucifer was the light bringer in the Garden of Eden, that Jehovah God made two automatons, Adam and Eve, that couldn't think for themselves. Lucifer was the rational being who tried to open the eyes of Adam and Eve. So Lucifer was the good guy in the Masonic scenario. Jehovah was the bad guy. But even in Uncle Sam, you got it. But and that's where you get the goat head representing Lucifer and the pentagram.
Well, there's something also rich about the individual, the real person, allegedly, upon which the Uncle Sam personage is based, or persona is based. And I find it interesting that Uncle Sam, in reality, was a sutler, or somebody who tagged along with the armies and sold them goods. And I laugh because isn't that perfect? In the years that would come, in the centuries that would come, the only winners that we ever really saw out of any wars were those who profited by the wars.
Boy.
They're the big winners. So I look at Uncle Sam, and he's making money off the war.
That's covered exceptionally well in Gustavus Myers's The History of the Great American Fortunes. During the Civil War, for example, oh gosh, I forget which founder. I think it was the Astors. But they all did this, all the dynastic clans, how they set up their monetary empires at first is typically one way was during a war they would buy these cheap junk gun parts, and then they would sell them back to the government at an exorbitant rate. And so the soldiers would have these guns that would fire backwards and blow up in their hands. But who cares if the soldiers died? These, as you just described, the sellers, the banksters, they made a killing.
Even Smedley Butler in War is a Racket, which can be read online. I don't think he gets too much into it in that particular book, and he might. In fact, I know he does in certain places. He talks about who made money off World War I. But he also talks about his own involvement with the Marines. And as he said, going into China to make the place safe for Standard Oil, going down into Haiti to make that country safe for United Fruit. And he also said that, as far as he was concerned, the U.S. military was being used no less then Al Capone would use a hitman. So he was stating quite frankly that he felt that they were hitmen for big business. And I do remember now that War is a Racket, he does mention several things, and he goes beyond that. If you're on the Internet and do a Google, you'll see some of his writings that were collected in a book that I had once read. And he goes into a little bit more in depth about what he felt was the misuse of the United States military.
Has he written something other than War is a Racket? That was a fantastic little book.
As you're asking me right now, all I can tell you is that there was a compilation of his letters that I did read.
Wow, okay.
Anything else that he might have penned, I don't know. But I would say that War is a Racket, of course, is a seminal work by him, and that even the letters were kind of interesting. There's also a book about him in that particular period about whether or not he was involved in a plot to overthrow Roosevelt. It's a book whose author, I believe his name is Hans Schmidt. I'll get the information. Very good book, and it's not really a complete counterpoint to Jules Archer's book in the 70s. Jules Archer's book about the military coup, I think, is probably most responsible for people really believing that Butler was going to lead an army against what was considered, Frankie the Red Roosevelt. But that Archer, I believe, the only credit I see other authors giving him is the fact that he had a very expansive work that covered almost everything. As somebody said, the one thing about his book that's probably a positive is that he's got every piece of information possible in there. That what supports what he believes, what doesn't support it. All right, fair enough. But there was no coup, and that's for another time as well. But there was no coup, and Butler. Not that I'm a Butler hugger, but Butler was lending himself to those who were the coup conspirators, so that in a sense he was acting as a double agent. And then he came before Congress and just laid out all his findings. People realized then that he was not going to lead that army. By the way, not one soldier was ever, no one soldier volunteered for the army. They had a camp up in, I believe it was, it's not Elkins, it's something like that up there in Maryland. It was an empty camp. Nobody was ever there. Nothing ever happened. And what's interesting, of course, too, is that even those who may have known they were conspirators or unwittingly involved, that's treason. And nobody hung. Nobody was indicted, let alone convicted. Nobody was indicted for that. So if you've got a coup happening and there's no account of sedition or treason against those people, what's going on? So then one might ask, well, then why was there a coup leaked out at all? And my take is that because Roosevelt, you knew what was going to come down the pike after 1933. And as a result, I think that they try to engender among the American people some kind of sympathy for their president, because at that time, many Americans understood what was going on, and they were definitely not behind it. So this might have been a galvanizing story, a good one, but fiction nevertheless. So I'll just leave it there. If anybody gets a chance to read that Hans Schmidt's book, I think it's pretty good. And it's also on Google, where they give you a really pretty generous amount of pages. So that's that. Getting back to D.C. and the street layout, the one thing we have not spoken to, and again, this is taken as just the way it is, but let's look at this, especially if you're dealing with the United States as a Christian country. I think you would agree that the architectural motif in D.C. for many of the most prominent buildings, like the Supreme Court, were built in what we would call classical, and that means it's okay. But it dates back to Rome and Greek pagan architecture, the pantheons, with the fluted columns and the whole 9 yards. So here we have a country that's supposed to be Christian, and in many, quote, temples of the government, they're in Roman and Greek style. Now, do you think that's hooey, or what's your take on that?
No, that's there for a reason. We are a descendant of Rome and Greece. We archaeologists of today, we dig up crumbly old buildings and bones and all that in ancient Egypt and Greece and Rome, and then we occasionally find reliefs in walls depicting that what the ancients worshipped. Now, I've sometimes thought about this. What if on those ancient walls it was just depicting what the elites worshipped, but maybe the masses worshipped something completely different? And this is what makes me think this. Let's say the world keeps going for another few thousand years. So 3,000 years from now, archaeologists dig up Washington, D.C., and any of our other capital cities, and if they come across our buildings, and if they come across even the carvings in stone in Indianapolis of pagan gods, what are they going to come to the conclusion of? They're going to think that we were that everybody were pagans, just like the ancient Egyptians. You think about it, the Christians today, even though they're the masses, they're carrying these Bibles around. Those are going to disintegrate. The only things that are going to endure are these pagan structures. So thousands of years from now, do you think archaeologists of the future are going to conclude that the United States was a Christian nation? I doubt it.
Well, with the way things go and where we are headed, no, it's not going to be seen as that whatsoever. All that's going to be forgotten about, I believe. So, or what's going to happen in time, take the scenario you just came up with and most people would say this is the way it's been all around the world, and it certainly doesn't bespeak of Christianity, but paganism. So in a way, in time to come, when that thought about the United States being or enjoying a favored status with the Lord, that's not going to be around. What's going to be around is all these symbols that harken back to what it was really all about. And in that sense, those archaeologists would be correct, because they found pagan, and it was pagan, but they sold Christianity to the Americans. Agree? Yeah.
The Christians have been duped so badly that they've incorporated one of the main Freemasonic symbols into their own iconography. The Christians have the cross. They have the fish thing, which is dubious, and we could talk about that. But then they've also embraced today the so-called Star of David. The Star of Solomon is a little bit better name. The six-pointed star, the hexagram.
Yeah.
That's a sign, hex, put a hex on somebody. It's a sign of witchcraft. But it's also that, again, the two intersecting triangles, that's an ancient pagan fertility symbol. The union of those two triangles, one represents the male, one represents the female, and there are specific reasons why. And then that's why the Rothschilds picked that symbol for the flag of the modern nation of Israel. And yet Christians think that that's a great thing, that they go around sporting bumper stickers with a cross on one side and or a fish, and then that six-pointed star on the other.
Right.
And no, that's a Luciferian thing you're sporting around there, Christian. It's a real shame. Oh, I've seen some real revisionist history on that. I watched a movie a few years ago with Richard Gere. It was called King David, and he was playing King David. And after a battle where King David was successful, the ancient Israelites were shown carrying these banners around with that hexagram on it. And I'm thinking, no, they didn't. They had the menorah then.
Interestingly, I, from time to time, came across something on TV I was watching, and it happened to be a rabbi talking about all things Jewish. And on two occasions, two different rabbis kind of like were conjecturing as to why the flag of the nation-state of Israel bears the six-pointed star. And their take was, if there ever was a symbol for the Jewish people, it was the menorah.
Yeah.
And the menorah should have been on the flag. Now, they didn't see anything nefarious in their Star of David, but they just thought it was interesting. And the other thing also I thought was key is when Barry Chamish was talking about naming Israel Israel at all. And he said, biblically, if you want to look at what it should be named, it should have been Judah.
Yeah.
So why is that? I don't know, but there you go. And, of course, was it understood that the use of the name Israel, when it appears in the New Testament, would people be thinking that they're referring to the Jews? All right. Now, I think we understand that Israel represents the body of believers. That's the new Israel.
Yeah.
Now, the Old Testament, that's fine, but that's already been completed. I don't believe that there's going to be any return of Jews to, quote, their homeland, because Revelation does not show that whatsoever. And had that, if that was to be, I believe it would have been in Revelation, which does mention the 144,000, and it does mention that they understand that they're part of the 12 tribes. They're quote sealed, unquote. But that does not mean that they were brought back to their homeland. That is one of what I believe is the greatest confusions deliberately created by naming that country Israel. They knew that Christians could be bamboozled into believing that that was a biblical. And let me get this straight. There's a difference between, they use the word ordained and anointed. That may be ordained as far as the Lord allowed it, like he allowed Nebuchadnezzar, like he allowed Pharaoh. But it was not anointed. So
yeah,
we have this hubbub now. And I passed a woman in an office who was a born-again Christian I knew. And as I passed her office, I saw on her desk a flag on a flagpole about maybe 2 feet high, and it was the flag of Israel. And I'm
yep.
I wanted to stop and say, do you know what that is? Do you really know what that is? But, I'm not going to do that in a workplace.
Yeah, that's the union of the fire triangle and the water triangle, and that's because boys have an outie and girls have an innie, and hello, wake up. Never mind.
But there's a million motifs that go through that also, like as it is above, it is below.
Yeah.
Another curious thing that people can look up for themselves is the painting called Apotheosis that is on the Capitol Dome ceiling. That is interesting. They got Neptune there with his trident. And again, and it's got Queen, Lady Liberty or whatever, taking a sword to some people. What is it with America that it's always got to be a sword and fighting? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like underneath Denver Airport.
Yeah, and there's a story told there about how the children of the world end war. Yeah, with that ugly-looking, modernized Nazi gas mask wearing soldier. Yeah.
End war by committing genocide? Is that what they have in mind?
Yeah, right. Let's kill the killers. That's it. That'll do it. It's like there should be a Monty Python movie about that. What do you do? We're killing them, but well, they were killers, but so were you. Well, this goes to 11. So, at any rate, all right.
Probably one last thing on Israel. Probably, quite likely that the most flagrantly Freemasonic architectural building for any governmental hall today is the Supreme Court of the modern nation of Israel. Man, they didn't hide anything there.
No, and that was funded by Rothschild as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you can see that. You can Google that. That pops up. I think somebody wrote about that in Rentz's articles years ago. I probably can still find it.
That's probably the same one I saw.
Yeah, and it's got the pyramid there. So, moving right along, the other thing also about these buildings that are built in that Roman and Greek style, you will also see in what is called the friezes, you'll find zodiac as well. Not all of them, but some of them do bear zodiac signs. You go to YouTube, you can also find, I think there was a documentary. It might have even made its way around the cable channels. But there's an individual who goes through and points to all the paganism that's there, and the zodiac characters are there as well. I got a couple more notes left, and we got to get out of here. But the one thing also is our money. Why does our money bear so much pagan symbolism, or frankly, just occult? Somebody once said in some kind of blog, when somebody said, was whacking on occult symbology. The person said, well, there's nothing wrong with occult. And they're like, what? And the guy says, well, oni means hidden. So the person to whom he was directing his comments goes like, oh, okay. And I'm like, wait a second. What, hidden is good? What is,
yeah.
I mean, we understand there's times when hidden is good, but this is not one of them. So the fact that it means hidden means they don't want anybody else knowing about it. And that really doesn't, strike me in my heart as something positive. But you look at the dollar bill, everybody's pretty familiar with both sides. You got that little owl that's hanging out in that upper right numeral 1, kind of like a shield up there, or enclave, if you will.
You got the 6-pointed star there.
Right.
The capstone missing on the pyramid.
On the backside, the capstone is missing. Well, it's suspended in air, and in there is the all-seeing eye.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it goes, and there's the fasci that pops up, and, of course, the number 13 in the amount of things like arrows, I believe, in the eagle's one talon. That's there as well. Now, if you don't have anything else, or if you do have something to chime in about, do so now, if you would, Theo.
No, I'm good.
All right, this last, just two things, and that'll bring us pretty much to the end of this audio. The flag, and this goes back to the 6-pointed star, but it's a 5-pointed star. Now, the fact that we even call it a star, I have no idea why. Being that when we look up in the sky, when I look at stars, I don't see 5-pointed stars or a 5-pointed image. I don't see any pentagrams up there. So how do they get the star business being 5-pointed? And so as the 6-pointed star has meaning, so does the 5-point. I mean, it is a pentagram. That's all there is to it. And we embrace it as a star, and it isn't. Now, do you remember that lunkhead story? The story I told about the lunkhead who wrote me at the newspaper?
No, not ringing a bell yet.
Well, the individual jumped all over me for claiming that the star was a pagan symbol, and her rationale was, well, if it's pagan, why would there be so many of them? And I'm like, oh, somebody, don't let her breed anymore.
Real quick, the 6-pointed star and the 5-pointed star are, of course, used in unison for the conjuring of demons.
Well, I mean, everybody's familiar with the pentagram and its linkage to ritual rites, satanic rites, call it whatever you want. But I mean, her statement was, "Why would there be so many of them?" Well, because there's 50 states, you idiot. The amount doesn't matter. And if you think about it, you take a look at the star, and it pops up in a lot of other places. The Chinese communists, Cuba, Korea, Russia, and the United States all use stars, especially with the military. So,
yeah, and why does it always have to be that?
Yeah, that's it. So I'm looking at this saying, that's, that what you have there are 50 pentagrams. I looked up, like I said, that I've never seen a pentagram in the sky.
I got something to add, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
Why do the Green Bay Packers have a G on their helmet instead of a GB?
Oh, don't you break my heart. No, why?
It's the G of Genesis or Gnosis of Freemasonry, that within the square and compass.
All right. Okay.
Well, that's according to Walter Veith, anyway.
All right. Oh, yeah, he did the whole sports stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let me see. I had one more thing on the agenda, I believe. No, that's it. Okay, I know what I'm going to. Just with the money, understand something. For Christians, you have to realize that money was not in the original system created by Jehovah. When it was decided that the tribes were not going to observe divine law as Jehovah gave them, and they wanted kings to rule them, from that point on, I think you could probably say that evil took over. And where in the divine system there would be only scales, as it says, they have fair scales or balances. Because
that opens up a whole show we could do
that's
about.
That's right. But that was about barter and trade. So what happens? The evil side comes along and creates money. Money was never supposed to be in the equation. But they create money, and then in this country they put on "In God We Trust." And people, Christians especially, when somebody gets their backup, by saying that Congress is thinking about taking the words "In God We Trust" off currency and wherever it appears with money. They go ballistic, and I'm like, no, take it off. You couldn't have affronted the Lord any worse than putting His name on filthy lucre, on the money He never created and never wanted. So by all means, get it off. But they freak out about it, so they don't understand either. We all live in a system. We're not saying that we don't, but you live in it as much as you have to, but you never become of it. You're just in it. And I guess that's the last remarks I'm going to make about what we've just done here. We got a minute or two, so do you want to do any kind of summary statement?
No, I don't. I think we summed it up, but you did just give me an idea for another show. Yeah, we could talk a lot about what is money, what is money, what's a dollar. Right.
And I mean, like I said, I'm not banging on bankers downtown, or we all go to them for one reason or another.
We're talking about the banksters.
Yeah, and the whole concept of money representing something of value, but the money itself is just a symbol. Although, of course, it is accepted as a what would you call it, a medium of transaction. All right, that'll do it. That'll wrap up Once Upon a Time, and this audio is really kind of directed toward Christians who don't understand what's going on. If you want to call this a Christian country, you got to look deeper. One last thing I thought of, Theo, and I'll put a link to it. Did I send you those photos of the newly constructed IRS building out in New Carrollton, Maryland, and what stands in front of it?
No, I don't think so.
All right, I'm sorry. I'll send it along, but I'll also post the links with this audio. It was sent to me by Eric from Georgia, and in front of the building they have a pyramid. And in the piece that was once the floating capstone, well, that's on top. And in it now has "We the People." And it's flanked on each side by a smooth column, kind of barbershop, wrapped with black and white colors. And on top of each column is the hand with the finger pointing upward. Now, people will say, oh, that's to point to God. No, it's another reference to "As it is above, it is below." And why in the world, of all the things that you could have put out in front of a government building, even though they're not government, why would you put a pyramid? Why?
We know why.
I know. I mean, and it looks a lot like what you saw yourself with, I guess, what was it, the Court of Justice in Israel?
Yeah.
Right. So there it is. I went on Google Map. I knew it was there because you can't. I mean, the photos weren't doctored. But in this day and age, what are you going to do? But I went to Google, and as much as I can maneuver around the building, it's there. You can see the pyramid. You can see the two columns, like I said, with the barbershop pole wrapping. And I'm like, why? And what does that tell you about where we're at? You know what I mean? What does that tell you about the whole notion of government as well? So at any rate, we do have to hop now. Theo, thanks for being with us. We're wrapping up Once Upon a Time. This is the final, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.